It's my distinct privilege to be moderating this press conference. We're joining you from traditional territories of several First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, the Chippewas, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Especially in view of why we are here today, we should also acknowledge that this area, known as Tagaranto or Toronto, is on territory that's subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. So why are we here? We're here today because 4 young Canadians are taking one of the country's largest financial institutions to court. Represented by lawyers from Ecojustice, Goldblatt Partners LLP, they allege that CPP, the Canada Pension Plan Investments, is breaching its duty to protect their pensions from climate risk. We'll be hearing from 5 speakers over the next 20 minutes, including representatives from Ecojustice, Goldblatt, Shift, and 2 of the young applicants at the helm of this groundbreaking case. We'll then move into the question period. So first, though, a few housekeeping items, and I'll stick closely to my notes here to make sure we get them all right. For those of you in the room, we'll have time for questions at the end of the remarks. Please also feel free to take a printed copy of the press release and media backgrounder. For those of you joining us on Zoom, please change your Zoom name to include your name and your outlet. That'll help us take questions and follow up later. Throughout the conference, please send your questions via the Zoom chat to Ecojustice Events, and please state your name and outlet. After the remarks, we'll be fielding them, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. If you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to Eco Events in the Zoom chat. Now, with that, we're ready to hear from some of the individuals from this groundbreaking case behind it. First of all, we're going to hear from Karine Pilofi, a lawyer and sustainable finance lead at Ecojustice. Ecojustice is Canada's largest environmental law charity. Karine.
An hour ago, we served the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board with a notice of application on behalf of 4 young contributors, alleging it's breaching its duties towards them by mismanaging climate-related financial risk. The applicants allege that CPP Investments' reported climate modeling drastically underestimates the financial risk of climate change to the pension fund. CPP Investments, Canada's largest pension fund manager and 6th largest in the world, used the tool criticized by some of its peers to report the physical risks of climate change. Without action to curb fossil fuels, we are on track for 3 degrees of warming by the end of this century. Scientists warned that this would be catastrophic. Economists warned that it would be the equivalent of living through the Great Depression forever. Yet, CPP Investments reports only a 4% net present value loss in a hothouse world and continues to invest in fossil fuel expansion. We do not think that that is the work of a prudent, careful fiduciary with long-term obligations, and so we are therefore challenging it in a groundbreaking case. It is the first time in any court, anywhere, that future beneficiaries will argue that one of the largest investors is breaching its duty of intergenerational equity and subjecting their pension contributions to undue risk of loss by mismanaging the financial risks of climate change.
Our next speaker is Simon Archer of Goldblatt Partners LLP. Simon.
Thank you, Craig. Good morning, everyone. I'm Simon Archer, a partner at Goldblatt Partners LLP, one of the lawyers working on the case. I've been advising pension boards and trustees for over 20 years, and in that time, I've developed an understanding of pension administrators' duties regarding climate change, the environmental and economic effects of which have only worsened over time. Where there was once a question as to whether pension administrators were required to consider climate change factors when making investment decisions, it is now clearer than ever that climate is a relevant factor that pension administrators must take into account when administering the plan and making investment decisions. And that is one of the principles this case asserts. Climate issues are not a matter of convenience or political choice, but a matter of law when it comes to pension administration. It was 20 years ago when the global law firm Freshfields publicized its legal opinion concluding that pension administrators have a fiduciary duty to consider environmental factors, including climate change, when those factors have material financial implications for a portfolio. Since then, dozens of legal experts have affirmed this principle around the world and right here in Canada. A decade ago, Prime Minister Mark Carney, then Governor of the Bank of England, warned that climate change is the tragedy of the horizon. He added, "We don't need an army of actuaries to tell us that the catastrophic impacts of climate change will be felt beyond the traditional horizons of most actors, imposing a cost on future generations that the current generation has no direct incentive to fix." Since he wrote those words, climate-related risks have grown in likelihood and in impact. We know now more than ever that climate change is creating real financial risks that will only get worse with each 1/10 of a degree of increase in global average temperature. Today, it is clear that pension funds like the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board must identify, assess, and manage climate-related risks and clearly communicate these risks and the steps being taken to address them to pension beneficiaries. This means that pension fiduciaries should not hide behind uncertainty or dated views about climate that suggest that climate risks are not a big concern, but must responsibly apply their best judgment, diligence, and skill to grapple with the full risks of climate change, including the known risk that failing to meet global temperature goals will cause major climate, social, and economic disruption. The CPP must adopt and communicate to working Canadians a credible, time-bound, and verifiable plan to address its climate risks. We are asking a court to interpret for the first time how the country's largest and most resourced pension fund, who makes investment decisions on behalf of most working Canadians, must identify, measure, and address the financial risks from climate change, given its obligation to invest without undue risk of loss and to act in the best interests of all Canadian contributors and beneficiaries, whether they are retired now or will retire in 2050 or beyond. And although this is a case about making sound investment decisions, this is not a case about money. We are not asking the court for damages. Instead, we are asking the court to provide guidance on the appropriate tools to use and the appropriate processes to follow to ensure that climate risks and impacts are taken properly into account. As long as pension funds continue to invest in assets that lack credible and verifiable transition plans that align with the necessary climate goals, and as long as they fail to transparently disclose the full extent of the risks that climate change poses to the long-term viability of a pension fund, then young contributors have every reason to be concerned that their retirement savings are being managed in a manner that jeopardizes the promise of a secure retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Next, we'll hear from two of the youth applicants, Aliya Hirji and Travis Olson. They'll share their motivations for taking part in the case and why it matters to them. We'll start with Aliya.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aliya Hirji. I'm a 20-year-old community organizer and political scientist based in Vancouver, BC, on unceded Musqueam territory. Today, my fellow applicants and I are sounding the alarm for all Canadians. If financial actors carry on with business as usual, the 3 degrees hotter world of tomorrow will be bleak. And if you're planning to retire after 2050 in that world, your pension might not be safe. I am one of over 22 million Canadians who count on CPP Investments to manage their retirement savings. Yet, every payday, CPP Investments is using our mandatory pension contributions to fund fossil fuels and worsen the climate crisis. By underestimating climate-related financial risks, CPP Investments risks exposing us to reduced retirement benefits, higher contribution rates, or both. We could end up paying more than previous generations and getting less back when it's our turn to retire. One reason we're on this path to runaway climate change is because our financial institutions are financing it. Pension funds in Canada are using our money to fund fossil fuels that cause climate chaos, and most people don't even realize it. Once we start naming it, we can start changing it. In my opinion, a reckoning with our financial system is inevitable. Our case alleges that a basic understanding of climate science and economics dispels CPP Investments' claims that investing in fossil fuel expansion is compatible with sustainability, an adequate standard of living, and a functioning economy. We are no longer okay with our money being used in unjust and risky ways. We're asking the pension plan to get on board now. We deserve better, we expect better, and other financial actors should take note. I have been organizing with Canadian pension recipients pushing for the end of fossil fuel investments since I was 15, and I know we're not alone in being concerned about the risks to our pension from climate change. My fellow applicants and I are just a small part of a growing global movement of people who refuse to remain silent about where our money is going. We are paying attention and demanding that our financial institutions protect our futures, and we are not going away. It's never too late to decide we deserve better. We are not naive, we are hopeful, and we're empowered. And I feel a personal responsibility to be part of that solution. This wasn't an easy decision. I do not want to be suing my pension manager, but I want to retire on a stable pension into a livable future. If taking CPP Investments to court is what's required to achieve that, so be it. Climate change isn't some distant reality. It's here, now, and expensive. And the cost will only grow if CPP Investments doesn't change course. If CPP Investments won't take climate-related financial risks seriously on their own, we'll turn to the courts to make sure they do.
Hi everyone, I'm Travis Olson. I am a 22-year-old grocery store clerk from a small town in Alberta. I'm here today because I'm deeply concerned that CPP Investments is using my mandatory pension contributions to actively worsen my future. I grew up in Alberta's oil-dependent economy. My parents' job prospects rose and fell with the price of oil. I've seen the instability it creates in the job market and in my community firsthand. I've also seen its impacts on the climate, experiencing increasingly extreme weather conditions year-round. But I know what's coming will be much worse. The world we're building is one where life is getting more and more expensive. It's a world where even diligent savers like myself are going to have to stretch our dollars to make ends meet. To retire in that more expensive and less affordable world, I'll be depending on my pension to help get me by. But CPP Investments' choices today make me worry that a soft landing won't be there when I need it. By continuing to invest my and 22 million other Canadians' money into fossil fuel expansion, CPP Investments appears to be locking us into a future of ever-diminishing pension returns, where the world either moves past fossil fuels and our money gets sunk into stranded assets, or the world where we continue on course and the climate change we finance wreaks systematic havoc on all our investments. A recent Ortec Finance report found that if all practices remain the same, Canadian pension funds could face investment return declines of up to 50% by 2040. I need my pension to be there when I retire, to protect myself, my younger brothers, and my family. My pension manager's practices are incompatible with an economically stable, climate-safe future that my generation is relying on. That's why, alongside Aliya, Rav, and Chloe, I'm challenging CPP Investments' climate risk management practices in court. I'm looking forward to the day our pension manager stops betting against the world my generation will inherit. And until they do so voluntarily, we're asking the courts to step in and protect our contributions.
Thank you so much, Aliya and Travis. Finally, we'll hear from Adam Scott, who's Executive Director of SHIFT, Action for Pension Wealth and Planet Health. SHIFT's a project of Make Way Canada and a charitable initiative that works to protect pensions and the climate and pensions. SHIFT is not a party to the litigation, but Adam Scott and SHIFT have years of experience and a depth of knowledge in the climate-related finance actions of Canada's largest pension plans. Adam.
So I'm grateful to be here today to show our support for the leadership these young Canadians are bringing. We see the objectives of their case as fully aligned with our mission at SHIFT. And our team has been tracking the climate-related investment practices of Canada's largest pension funds for more than 6 years now, drawing from international best practices. We analyze dozens of indicators across 11 Canadian funds, as well as leading international pensions. And we publish an annual Canadian Pension Climate Report Card every year to track that. We really want these pensions to succeed. We know this is not an easy challenge, and I'm grateful we've been able to celebrate genuine progress in the pension sector over the years as we have been doing this work. In 2022, we had high hopes that CPP Investments was serious when it committed to aligning its portfolio with net zero in 2050 in the best interest of contributors and beneficiaries. An important first step that has also been made by 6 other major Canadian pension funds, as well as many of the world's largest. But in subsequent years, CPP Investments failed to disclose a credible plan for achieving this target. In spite of its significant resources and sophistication, the fund has consistently scored towards the bottom of the pack in our report card rankings. And unlike many other funds, we've been increasingly alarmed to see CPP Investments scores dropping over time as it backs away from its earlier commitments. And when CPP Investments communicates about climate risk in speeches from its executives, on its website, or in social media, we're concerned with what we hear. In our opinion, the fund executives don't seem to understand systemic climate risk. They are using discredited modeling tools to imply that somehow worst-case climate scenarios would have only a minimal impact on returns. This runs counter to warnings of leading experts and fiduciaries and actuaries. This is a huge red flag. CPP Investments can't claim to be managing financial risks that it doesn't measure or understand properly. And in May of this year, just 3 years after announcing it, CPP Investments abandoned its net zero commitment without even mentioning it in their annual report. We only discovered this thanks to one of my eagle-eyed colleagues who saw it buried in the website on their Q&A section. And CPP Investments also seems to have removed all mention of its earlier promise to invest $130 billion in green and transition assets by 2030. We all know that actions speak louder than words, which is why Shift also closely tracks as best we can where CPP investments actually are. With the science showing that new investments in fossil fuels isn't compatible with a safe and stable climate, CPP Investments continues to bet billions of our pension savings on climate failure, investing in companies with business models dependent on continued global expansion of fossil fuels. Not including major infrastructure investments and other financial instruments, we estimate CPP Investments holds at least $23 billion in fossil fuel investments. That number is likely far higher than that. Some very recent examples within the last month: they invested $4.1 billion in Sempra Infrastructure, a company that builds, owns, and operates fossil gas pipelines in the United States. They spent $1.4 billion investing in AlphaGen, a US company that owns 23 power plants that burn gas, oil, diesel, and kerosene. Those are just the most recent examples, but there are dozens and dozens like that. Some of CPP Investments' portfolio companies have a long and well-documented history of fossil fuel expansion, lobbying against climate policy in the jurisdictions where they operate, and misleading investors and the public about their approach to climate risk. CPP Investments is well-placed as a large, well-resourced pension to adopt a credible climate investment strategy. Many of its peers have already done so. Europe's largest pension fund, ABP in the Netherlands, is slightly larger than CPP. It has a science-based climate target and has excluded all investments in companies that derive more than 1% of revenue from coal, oil, or gas extraction since 2021. Here in Canada, our second largest pension, La Caisse, managing the retirement savings for Quebec residents with $500 billion in assets, has had a strong climate policy in place since 2019, exceeding all of its interim targets by linking its staff compensation to achieving its climate goals. La Caisse screens for coal and oil investments, having fully exited its positions in both as of 2023. La Caisse executives continue to say that these actions improved the financial position of the fund. And just 1 month after CPP Investments abandoned its climate commitments, last May, La Caisse doubled down, committing $400 billion in climate action investments by 2030. On 2 separate occasions in the past 5 years, Shift has supported beneficiaries in sending formal letters to CPP investment executives, asking important questions on their approach to managing climate risk. In both cases, the fund responded only with platitudes. We've also supported thousands of Canadians to participate in CPP's biannual public consultations, only to have their reasonable questions get the runaround. After years of attempting to engage constructively with CPP Investments on these risks, It's no wonder that Canadians are resorting to legal action to protect their best long-term interests. The security of our pensions and our future depends on a stable climate. We need pension fund managers who actually invest in our best long-term interest. Thank you.
And thank you, Adam. So that concludes the remarks from our speakers. We'll now open the floor for questions. Folks in the room, please line up at the mic that you can see right here to our right. Folks on Zoom, please send your questions to the Zoom chat Ecojustice events name. If your question is for a specific speaker, please indicate. Please note that Karine is able to answer questions in French if needed. Veuillez noter que Karine est en mesure de répondre à vos questions en français si nécessaire. We will alternate between questions in the room and online and try to get through as many as possible. Nous allons alterner entre les questions posées dans la salle et celles posées en ligne. Et nous allons essayer d'en traiter autant que possible. So the floor is open. And I, at some point, will step aside as from the floor, questions will be directed. Any at the moment? So let me add one quick thing, and then I'll stop as soon as there's a question. All of this comes 3 months after the International Court of Justice unanimously handed down its climate change advisory opinion that has, in legal terms, been a game changer. And it's not full of platitudes and generalities, but a lot of hard legal specifics that no country and no legal system can afford now not to take account of. So this action, although I understand this application has been in the planning for some time, it comes at a moment where what is being asked for here is well due and something that was signaled by the ICJ judgment in terms of notions like the due diligence of state organs, such as the CPP. Any questions? No, ça va? Oui.
I think I'll go there.
Donc, vous avez mentionné ce que fait le Québec pour ce qui est de la casse. Et je me demande si l'Ontario pourrait un peu s'inspirer et à l'échelle du pays, est-ce qu'on pourrait s'inspirer de ce que fait le Québec?
Je crois que oui. Je veux dire, au Québec, il y a beaucoup de campagnes encore qui visent la caisse de dépôt. C'est pas parfait. Ils investissent toujours dans le gaz, ce qui n'est pas nécessairement sécuritaire d'un point de vue climatique. Mais c'est certain que quand on se compare, on se console. Et je pense qu'effectivement, il y aurait beaucoup à s'inspirer du Québec. C'est sûr qu'on n'a pas la même situation politique. On est la première juridiction au monde à avoir mis fin à l'exploration et la production de pétrole, ce qui a été confirmé par la Cour suprême récemment qu'ils doivent fermer leurs puits. Donc, on a un consensus social au Québec à l'effet qu'il faut faire tout ce qu'on peut pour lutter contre les changements climatiques. Puis la Caisse de dépôt fait son devoir dans ce contexte-là. Faut savoir, il parlait de l'engagement qu'ils ont pris de 400 milliards de dollars dans des solutions climatiques d'ici 2030. C'est environ 80% de son actif sous gestion en ce moment. Donc, c'est quand même... Et leur plan était endossé par le Climate Bonds Initiative. Donc, il y a de la robustesse là, dans ce qu'ils proposent. Ça serait bien que d'autres fonds de pension du Canada voient aussi que la véritable opportunité économique du siècle à venir, c'est dans les solutions climatiques et non dans rendre le problème plus grave.
OK. Puis vous dites que le régime de pension met vos avantages en péril en gérant de manière inadéquate les risques financiers. Est-ce que vous pensez qu'il y a d'autres régimes de pension ailleurs au monde qui font pareil en ce moment?
C'est sûr qu'on n'est pas dans une situation idéale, sinon on ne serait pas en ligne pour 3 degrés Celsius si les institutions financières mondiales ne finançaient pas les développements pétroliers qui vont à l'encontre de notre futur. Mais je dirais que CPP Investissement et, excusez-moi, en français, Investissement RPC, est vraiment ce qu'on appelle en anglais un laggard. Là. Ils sont à la traîne même à l'international, je dirais. Et puis, on a aussi beaucoup d'exemples qui montrent que c'est possible de faire beaucoup mieux. Adam en a noté quelques-uns. Il y a le Norges Bank, le plus grand investisseur institutionnel au monde, qui a dit que, dans le fond, le modèle qu'a utilisé Investissement RPC donne des estimations de pertes qui sont implausibles et a donc décidé de ne pas l'utiliser. Et on a d'autres exemples, AXA Assurance, un fonds de pension danois, des économistes ont tous dit que ce modèle sous-estime énormément les risques physiques. Et ici, on a un investissement RPC qui les a utilisés sans appliquer vraiment de jugement sur les résultats, sans se poser des questions sur qu'est-ce qui manquait, quels étaient les paramètres, malgré le fait qu'il y avait des avertissements assez sérieux dans le monde de la finance.
Puis, quelles sont les prochaines étapes, les prochaines démarches à suivre?
On va se reposer. Les prochaines étapes, c'est qu'on, dans l'année qui suit, on espère déposer notre dossier de preuve et se préparer pour une audience sur le mérite.
OK, merci.
Testing. Okay. I have a question from Melissa Shin from Bloomberg News. Her question is, hi there, can you confirm that this is not currently contemplated / filed as a class action?
I confirm this is not a class action. The only applicants are the 4 young Canadian contributors listed. So it's Aliya, Chloe, Rav, and Travis.
All right. Thank you for the answer, says Melissa. My next question is from Stéphane Blais. Pouvez-vous donner quelques exemples d'investissements de RPC qui mettent le climat en péril? Merci.
Bien sûr, tous les détails sont dans notre notice d'application, mais on a comme exemple des investissements dans une compagnie qui s'appelle Tyne Energy, qui font de l'exploration de pétrolière. Il y a des investissements dans Wolf Midstream, qui font aussi de l'expansion. On a beaucoup d'exemples aussi d'investissements sur les marchés publics, dans ExxonMobil, Chevron, qui font face à environ une vingtaine de causes aux États-Unis, leur demandant de compensation pour des dommages climatiques. Cette responsabilité-là, si elle était confirmée par les tribunaux, pourrait aller dans les trilliards de dollars. Il y a des investissements récemment. Investissement RPC faisait de la publicité pour Canadian Natural Resources, qui est un des plus grands producteurs de pétrole au pays, avec des émissions de gaz à effet de serre très élevées, qui font que d'autres fonds, comme Norges Bank, le plus grand investisseur institutionnel au monde, ont rejeté ces investissements-là. Et je rajouterais, en fait, on ne connaît pas tous leurs investissements parce qu'il y a très peu de transparence. Donc ça, c'est ce qu'on voit, le bout de l'iceberg, comme on dit. Il n'y a aucune divulgation sur les obligations, la dette, dans le fond, alors qu'on sait qu'il y a au-dessus de 26 milliards d'investis dans des bons corporatifs.
Thank you. We have another question from Mitchell Beer. You filed this in which court?
The Ontario Courts of Justice, General Division. Ontario Superior Court of Justice.
Thank you so much, says Mitchell. We have another question from Venetia Jones. This question is for clients. Can you say more about what motivated you to join the case?
Feel free to go ahead.
Just give me 1 second. As I mentioned before, I have been working with pension recipients in Canada for several years now. There is a big growing movement to stop the investments in fossil fuel expansion across Canada. I personally feel quite frustrated with the way that our financial institutions function and that we are told or it's normal for us to be unaware of what's going on with our money and how it's being invested. And so this was a big compelling piece of why I joined this case, because I think that for me, my pension should be transparent and it should be investing in my best interest.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. I feel like this is the next natural step for me. I am big on pro-labor stuff, so people working are entitled to know where their pension is being allocated in terms of investments, and more clarity is absolutely key in this moment.
What is your biggest fear if, things don't change? And if you're thinking like, 30, 40 years down the line, what are you most afraid of?
Yeah, sure. I guess ultimately, when it comes to the case, by the time I retire, that'll be 2068. I'm worried that both the climate and my pension will both be in a worse state. I'm worried personally that when I end up retiring, these assets won't be worth what they are today. And I think we will, whether we like it or not, change has to happen now. Yeah.
Are you worried that you just won't be able to retire fully? Is that a concern?
That is definitely a concern, especially in my family. That's a concern my dad has. So it's very real to me that there is a chance that I will have to work for my whole life.
I think a big part for me is this environmental grief that a lot of young people are experiencing. Because of the scale of the climate crisis, we're thinking about this like day and night, not because it's our job to, but because we genuinely care and we are really afraid. The financial system wants us to be anxious and paralyzed, but we're choosing to act. It's never too late for us to decide that we deserve better, and that's what we're doing here. I feel a very personal responsibility to be part of that solution as a way of like quelling those anxieties. And I want people, like all Canadians and everyone around the world, to feel confident in their ability to challenge our financial systems, regardless of how much experience you have. You have the right to question what your pension is doing with your money.
Okay, thanks.
Well, great. That wraps up our time for questions. Thank you all for joining us today. Merci d'être venu. We've printed copies of the press release and media backgrounders. They're available here, and a link has been shared inside the Zoom chat, and we'll also be circulating the recording of this press conference. For any additional media inquiries, please don't hesitate to reach out to Kari at Ecojustice, whose email is listed in the press release, and some of you will already have been in touch. Thank you again to our speakers, especially to our 4 inspiring youth applicants, and to all of you who attended. Thank you very much.